if we can change the way we think and our thinking patterns, then we will actually make better choices in general that equate to this change of mind and perspective. Another thing that I like as far as the mental exercises, like I said, is the journaling, is dumping out the negativity, following that up with the gratitude list, and then writing out these things that you want as if you already have them. So you're literally retraining your mind to go from the negative to the positive on a regular basis. And again, it's not about just, I think a lot of times in like the new age movement or spiritual groups, the yoga community, it's like everything's love and light. And it's like, well, no, it's not, you know? And we have to acknowledge the darkness and the fears and the anxieties and get that out in order to bring in the things that we do want.
Welcome to the Do You Feel Heard podcast, a production of Helping the Herd. Helping the Herd is committed to empowering individuals to liberate themselves from the patterns that keep them from creating their ideal life. If you like this podcast, visit helpingtheherd.com to find resources and personalized coaching to empower you to be your best self. Good afternoon, gentlemen. A special afternoon episode of the Do You Feel Heard podcast. We have, as usual, Derek here, and today's guest, Matt Michaels. How are you gentlemen doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Excited for our conversation.
Doing fantastic. Always good to see you in. Thanks for being on the pod, Matt.
Thank you.
Derek, you had some things that you wanted to start the conversation with, so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, Matt, it's been a while since we've last seen each other, but I follow you on the socials and hearing stuff there, so always happy to get a chance to connect. I guess I'd like to first start with your experience so far with Helping the Herd, and I know you've been, you've been involved with some of the coaching that we do here, so if you could tell us anything about what you've got from Helping the Herd, what any takeaways in which it's changed your relationship and how you communicate, anything that's really stuck out for me.
Yeah, definitely. I think Cal and I were some of Ian's first clients, actually. So he offered to help us with some of our toxic patterns and just explosive conflict scenarios that we were having on a regular basis. And he just opened us up to all different types of tools and resources that we could use to create more of a positive way of working through conflict rather than it being this big explosive issue every single time. And so like I'd already had some education when it comes to like attachment styles and things like that, and had this awareness of the patterns, but no awareness on how to resolve the patterns or how to work through them or how to communicate effectively. And honestly, I was pretty slow to pick up on the conversational pieces, but Callan was pretty quick at picking it up. So she kind of led the way with that and created enough buffer for me to catch up. But man, it's crazy. It's been about a year now since we ended, is that right?
I think it might have even been longer than that. It's been quite a while since we've had like regular sessions.
Well, we were just talking about, it's almost like, and this is going to come off bad, but I'll back it up, but it's almost like our relationship has gotten boring because it's just safe. Like, it's just like, there is no more of these huge ups and downs and fights anymore. And so it's like, oh, like this is actually just what like safety feels like. This is what secure attachment feels like. And when you're not used to that, you're used to these huge ups, these huge downs. It's been getting used to that, although it's been awesome, been so good. And so, yeah, there's still conflict, but it is handled in a way that we don't have to like have a screaming matches or put each other down or degrade each other. And the few times that has happened in the last year or 2 years, it's like immediately following it up with like apologies and then having the real conversation in the way that we've learned to have it and back to reconnection. And so it's just crazy to think about all these core issues that we had and how much we were just going back and forth about the same things, never hearing each other and just circular talking all the time about the same issues. And it just doesn't happen anymore. I say this all the time, but when I started learning about attachment styles, I thought secure attachment was like this elusive thing that didn't really exist. Like, it's not really possible because we're all too fucked up. But it's really cool to experience that and see what that looks like, and be able to present that to others. And I would also say that my work with Ian and our communication coaching really led to my next step, which was like doing my own inner child work and somatic emotional release work. And so it's just part of my own progression of learning. And now I've been able to implement all these tools in how to communicate with my clients. And that's been huge, man. Just learning how to communicate with my friend group, with my men's group, just everything has improved with being able to be open and honest. Being able to just vocalize how I feel without reacting. And so I can just express the feeling that I'm having rather than reacting about something. And that's also been huge. So if you have any specific questions about that, I can go in further. But
Derek, you're muted. Your air conditioner kicked back on, and that new mic of yours is so sensitive, man. It sounded like a jet airliner was parked in your living room. While he's fixing that, I had a question. How would you say, because I was actually just talking with somebody earlier this morning about like wanting to maybe hear about how does it impact the individual, not just like the relationship. Sure, it's great for people in relationships to be able to talk more effectively with that one person or navigate conflict more effectively with that person. But what about like just you as a person, you individually? How has the work, this journey, and your work on yourself and your communication and how you choose to show up, how has that been impacted? And if there are people who are like, well, that's just for people who are in a couple or who are in a relationship, like what would you want them to understand about it?
yeah, for one, I would say that like we're all in lots of different relationships as far as occupational, interpersonal, friendships. So it impacts how I react to all relationships in my life, for one. So that's a huge thing. The other thing is just deeper self-awareness and awareness of my patterns, my cycles, my responses to things. So now I know, like, when someone upsets me, instead of just lashing out and being upset, I can just say, I'm just going to let you know that I'm feeling a lot of anger in my gut right now. So I'm just going to let you know that. And that kind of puts out the fire for a bit to allow me to process. They know where I'm at, but then I'm not in this reactive state. So I can just respond with how I feel rather than lashing out and creating a big scene. And the biggest thing is the self-awareness and the buffer to choose to how I respond rather than reacting in all areas of my life. I have more patience. I have a better idea of how to interact with all of the world around me. Asking for consent with clients rather than dictating what they do. Asking for consent is huge. In fact, I just had something recently with a client. Like, I had just posted a screenshot of our conversation. I X'd out her name, but she was like, well, I would have appreciated it if you would have asked me for that. I'm like, oh shit, you're totally right. I didn't ask for consent, you know? And in the past, I would have had feelings about that and been like, well, kind of like, fuck you, you know? It's like, I marked out the name. Why does it matter? Like, who cares? You know, it's because I don't care about those things, but that doesn't mean that someone else doesn't care about those things. So just having more space for other people's feelings and how they're impacted and not passing so much harsh judgment upon them and just being more accepting and aware.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's easy to forget that this stuff, no matter how much you're focused on a relationship at that time, always begins with yourself, always begins with that process where things are filtering through you in the actions, the words that you are able to take and say. That's definitely been my experience. You know, I've worked with Ian as well, and I just recently have been noticing this process of noticing feelings, looking beneath them for what need is there, and being able to communicate that happening automatically without having to pull up any frameworks, without pulling up the tools. And that's that little subtle benefit you get from some intentional work that it's hard to describe, hard to like see the benefit. When, you know, it's like, all right, you're going to be pulling out spreadsheets and charts every time you start talking to someone, and you're pinpointing this, and am I going to turn into a robot? And it's just not like that. It's a subtler process that opens up who knows what else. Like you mentioned inner child work, somatic stuff. Who knows what in the body, what in your past comes up whenever you start tuning into yourself. Again, even if your focus is all on what they're doing and what's going on in that relationship, at the end of the day, it always comes back to yourself. And I'm just so happy to hear about that safety and security that you're feeling in your relationship. And I think it's so relatable to be like, not be able to conceptualize that or think it's like a unicorn that, maybe an ideal that we're striving for. But how cool that you're able to kind of rest in that more. And one thing Ian will often say, is that safety is needed before much else can go through. Much more vulnerability, sharing, openness. If you don't feel safe, everything's shut down.
Totally. Yeah, and as you were talking, I was like, the primary benefit that comes from it is emotional maturity. Right? I feel like that's kind of what you were explaining there. And when both parties have that emotional maturity, then you can have that deeper impact and that depth and that intimacy and that connection and that safety.
So I have a question, since I love where we're at. I love this conversation. So while I have both of you here, I hear both of you talking about finding emotional maturity, finding the ability to go beyond the feeling, deeper to the need, more seamlessly, not like a robot, just kind of incorporating these concepts into your daily life. I'm wondering or thinking maybe there's somebody listening to this saying, how in the hell is communication connected to your emotional maturity or your understanding your needs or understanding your feelings or a lot of these things that you're talking about, creating a buffer before reacting? How is someone helping you communicate or teaching you concepts of communication helping you to achieve those things? How is that connected for each of you? Because you both have had your own experiences with this work.
Yeah. I'll pop off first. I'd be happy to. Pop. I think communication is what's going on internally all the time, whether we realize it or not. We're talking to ourselves. That's the mindfulness, the meditation aspect of a lot of this work is around, oh yeah, I'm thinking, and realizing those are thoughts, those aren't who I am. And if you get any kind of space there, and you start realizing I'm talking to myself all the time, opens up this whole world of being a better friend to yourself, a better communicator with yourself, and being able to explore. Be that through journaling or through just literally in the moment as you're thinking, processing, having that thought like, I'm so angry. I have so much anger inside of me. What do you do with that? And so I think it starts there, the conversation with yourself. And then the next step, if we're in any kind of interpersonal situation, would be communicating that or not. And more skillfully communicating that can make all the difference when it comes to how that's received and how people are able to show up and help you with your work, with what you're dealing with your growth. If you just reactively share, you don't have any awareness, you don't consider if they're available or not, you might not ask for consent before bringing something up, that might go, maybe it goes great. Maybe they have all the space in the world and maybe they perfectly understand you and maybe it goes well. But maybe not. And then maybe that leads to cycles of turning inward, shutting down, unhealthy behaviors. Who knows where that might go? But you have a little bit of communication work, you have a little bit of a toolkit you can call on and some experience here. Maybe you start asking for support in healthier ways, better ways. Maybe you start finding people who are available and being able to have more honest conversations with them. And I think, we're all walking each other home. We're all there helping each other. And being able to access that isn't a default. It takes a little bit of intention and work through communication. So it starts with you, but then again, it'll always go back to your community and go around you. And I think that's an important, an incredible help in my individual path is the people around me. Hanging around with people who lift me up and who are able to be a mirror or to help. But I have to show up and be able to, work with them where they are too.
Thanks for sharing, Derek. What about you, Matt? What do you think?
Yeah, so I essentially think of learning how to communicate is about learning how to express your needs, your desires, and your feelings. And if I'm not aware of those needs, the desires, and feelings, how am I supposed to communicate it effectively in the first place? So as I come learn about how to communicate, it starts with like identifying what it is that I actually need or desire or require. And I think that a lot of the times there wasn't that awareness. So it's just lashing out in anger or response or reacting to things because I don't actually know what I need. In the moment, I don't know that I need space. I don't know how I'm actually feeling, so I can't express myself effectively. The other part of that is being able to express what's going on inside of me, but also having the capacity to hold space for my partner or others that are having feelings and not taking those things personally about their feelings and what they're going through. And all of that is centered around learning how to communicate altogether. So by learning how to communicate effectively, then I'm learning how to hold space for my partner so she can express her needs, her feelings, her desires, and I can hold space for that and respond to that in a way that she can digest. And like that is it, right? So she's building self-awareness, I'm building self-awareness, and then we can express those levels of awareness to one another. And if you don't have those levels of self-awareness, there's nothing to communicate. So to me, that's how they intersect.
Yeah, well put. Thanks, man. Thanks for sharing.
What about you, Ann? How would you answer that?
Don't get me started on this. That was for y'all. I mean, yeah, everything you guys said definitely resonates, and I think the consent piece, I think comes into play more than I ever realized that it would in communication until it was presented to me, specifically like the concept of domain. What is yours? What is mine? What, when I'm feeling a certain way, am I projecting that onto you so you feel it so I don't have to? Because that's all sorts of communication there. Or you're feeling a way and I don't want you to feel that way, so am I trying to change how you feel because it makes me uncomfortable that you feel a certain way? I feel responsible for your feelings, which that for me started at a very early age. So breaking those patterns through my communication with myself, like you were saying, Derek, like I'm constantly talking to myself. Like I'm telling myself about my experience all the time. Ooh, it's hot outside. Oh, it smells like it's going to rain. Oh, this. That's all communication, right? My witness is telling my avatar, my body, whatever is experiencing this, about how we're perceiving it, how we're experiencing this life here and all the different pieces of it. And so I think for me that has been one of the biggest impacts in how I show up in all the relationships that I touch. Like Matt said, it's all relationships. Like when you said that, it definitely struck a chord in me of like, when you're thinking about the individual, like, yes, it's the inner work, but really it's the inner work and how it applies to and impacts those around you. Because unless you're going to live in the woods for the rest of your life, make your own food, hunt squirrels, grab water from the creek, and never leave that cabin, you're going to be interacting with other people. And that's where the communication is very important, and where a lot of these tools and concepts really make big impacts, is how you engage with those around you.
Thank you. Makes sense.
What do you guys think about that? This is kind of off topic, but it's like
Send it.
This idea that there's up to like 50% of the population that doesn't even have an inner dialogue at all.
Wow.
And so like we talk about these conversations we're having with ourselves, but there's literally a high amount of the population that supposedly doesn't even have that inner dialogue. And it's like, what does that mean about them in general?
And how do you know that, right? Like, where are they getting those numbers? What's that sample from? Because they're extrapolating, surely. They haven't tested 50% of all people on the planet. So
that's accurate.
I would like to see the actual, like, the sample that they're referring to and where they took it and how they did that. Because I don't know how you would even know that. How would you know that
I've
they,
only
like...
met one person that says that they don't have it.
So how are they experiencing reality based on what you talked with them, like that conversation with them? How are they experiencing their reality?
I don't even know how to ask the questions to figure that out, dude. Like, I don't, no comprende. Like,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's...
There's no, if there's no inner dialogue, there's almost no, like, inner narrative or inner story about, like, what's happening, which means, like, what comes up for me is just, like, that NPC thing. Like, you're just, like, not even, you're just a program. Like, you're not even thinking about these things. It's so interesting. So, I don't know.
I know where my mind goes to it. Immediately went to whenever I tried to teach my grandpa a basic mindfulness meditation. Just coming to your breath, noticing thoughts as thoughts, maybe labeling them, thinking, going back to your breath. Sat with him for 10 minutes, did a little guided meditation. And then, we get to the end. Like, well, how was that? He was like, no thoughts. Nothing. No, nothing. No. Just sat there. And I know where I come from my one framework, and I'm not discounting this. I have the same questions that Ian has about how we would know. But I think how I would answer it in a meditation teaching context is that likely what's going on with a lot of people is just a lack of awareness of the fact that they're thinking because they're so identified with thoughts. And we get so identified with it, and we don't know until we see there's another way of being, a witness perspective, a less attached state where you're seeing thoughts appear like clouds in the sky and drifting by, or like leaves in the river. Until you experience that internally, not just have someone tell you it's like that, not just have someone put that on you, you might not think of those thoughts. It's so funny to talk about. I see what you're saying about no comprende, Matt. You might not be able to conceptualize your thoughts, that stream of thoughts, as anything even that you could know as a thought. Yeah. Anything separate. So all they're seeing is just, nope, I'm just being, and there's nothing in front of me. But there was a stream, my grandpa was having some thought of his hip hurting, and this is boring, and, what's my hippie grandson doing right now, is this witchcraft? He had those, but he was so identified. This is my thought. He had those, but he was so identified that he couldn't place that. And I do think that's fair, and I'm not judging anyone for being that. And I think it's a place where a lot of us start. It's where I started before I had a tool, learned how to meditate, spent hours doing it, and eventually had some kind of a different way of looking at things. I think we all kind of start there, whether that's a trauma response, whether that's because we have something we can't, break out of. We have to maintain that control. Like, everything that's coming through my mind is mine, and there's no thoughts coming in. Maybe we have to feel control. I think there's a lot of things that keep us from that. So that's where my thought goes right away, is that most people do, but I'm totally open to the idea that some people don't, because we do have this whole range of the human experience. Color blindness, synesthesia, where people hear colors and, see sound. So open to it, but I bet most people, it's the attachment.
Adding on to that too, another crazy, cosmic draw of the cards or flip of the coin is there are people who can't tell by looking at your face that you are having a certain emotion.
Mm-hmm.
There's people one of the books I was reading, one of Dr. Stan Tatkin's books was talking about that there's like a clinical diagnosis of people who just can't read like body language or facial features. They're just like oblivious to how people are like visibly demonstrating they're visibly communicating without words.
Yeah, that's something that's so painful for me, is when someone can't read the room. Or it's like, you can't feel that everybody is stressed out about what you are still saying and communicating. Right. It's like, I want to crawl out of my skin, and I can feel that everybody else wants to crawl out of their skin, and there's no awareness of that. It's like this this numbness to the energy around them, that's painful for me.
That's right. And you can even go further, prosopagnosia, face blindness. People can't recognize faces. You could see someone and not know that's my friend, or that's Brad Pitt, or that's I say Brad Pitt because I think he famously is supposed to have that.
Let me forget his face.
Brad Pitt is supposed to actually have prosopagnosia. I don't know how he's so famous and successful if he can't even recognize. That's what I've heard. You know, maybe it's hearsay,
Maybe
but
he's just that much of a narcissist. He doesn't remember.
oh.
Oh no, he's not saying Brad Pitt specifically can't remember faces.
I am. No, I really am. I'm saying
you're
that's
saying
why
Brad
that
Pitt
example
specifically cannot remember people's faces.
He's supposed to be one of the famous examples of it, prosopagnosia. And, you know, we can fact check this. We need to get a fact checker over here, you know, off screen next time, but real time. But for now, we'll have to do this after. But yeah, famously one of the people with it. So just to highlight that, like you're saying, that whole realm of human experience. And I'm really open. I try to be so curious because, especially coming from a medical training, can be really black and white. You know, this is how the nervous system works and this is how this works. And more we learn about just this whole range of the spectrum of being a human in the nervous system, and everyone's seeing the world in this totally different way.
So I want to come back before we get too far away from it, because I was really curious to hear Matt's response on this. But Derek, you were talking about your methodology for cultivating awareness, which was meditation, which was allowing thoughts to form as clouds and allowing them to drift off, and like, oh, look at that thought, and now it's leaving. And I know a lot of people who struggle to allow those thoughts or those feelings to just pass because they're so strong, and they're, you know, very attached to this experience. And for those, because my personal methodology for cultivating awareness is not meditation. For me, I'm a very pragmatic thinker. I'm a very analytical. I'm gonna, you know, analyze every aspect of what's happening, and that'll help me gain awareness of what's happening. And so that's why most of my tools are very tangible, right? So like the nod tool, for instance, like name that you have a story, which helps you separate yourself from the story. And how I got there was asking myself when I'm having these big feelings about something, is like, do I even know that this is true? Do I know for sure this is happening? Can I prove that this is happening? Or do I think this might be happening, and I can convince myself the likelihood, high percentage, low percentage, that this may or may not be happening, but I don't actually know. And so until I can admit that, I'm all sorts of swept up in this story, this made up reality in my head, and I'm feeling very real feelings about this thing that may not even be happening. And so for me, cultivating awareness was like deep internal exploration of like, is this real? I'm having big feelings. What are these feelings about? And pulling my own strings until I found the root of something. And that allowed me to see, wow, it's coming from this, not me. I'm not this feeling or this experience. It's over here, and it's coming from my, you know, my anxious brain, or my ultimately my ego filling in the gaps of what I don't know with the worst case scenario. And it's so friggin' believable that I just get swept up in it. And so that was kind of my first dipping my toe in the water of like separating myself from the experience that's happening and allowing me to be far more aware of what's happening, because it's not really happening to me, it's happening to Ian. And so I can watch as these things happen to Ian, and the longer I've been on this path, the less attached I am to what happens or how Ian gets where he's getting. Whereas before I was very attached. I had big feelings about all sorts of different things happening. So my all of that to say, Matt, what's your methodology, or how did you find awareness? How did you first get to that place where you're like, oh shit, like I can separate these things from what's happening, and now I'm in control. Not Matt is in control. I am in control of Matt. When did that? How did you get there, and when did that happen?
It's been a combination of things slowly over time, but I remember I was like sitting on the couch with my girlfriend at the time. This was probably when I was like 25, so about 10 years ago. And I was just like, man, this is all bullshit, and I should start meditating. And it's just like this thought that dropped into my mind. And so I started meditating, and that was really the beginning of starting to build self-awareness, and having different thoughts and ideas about things. And it literally just happened sitting on a couch watching Netflix that, like, I need to start doing this thing. And that led to journaling, which was really big for me, to separate the stories, get the whole story out. Have you ever, like, when I do free flow journaling and I'm just, like, getting the shit out, right? And then it always transitions back into a place of positivity, of something positive. It just happens like that every single time. If I just journal out all the negativity, I end up in a place of gratitude. And so that was part of it. And then I am a lot like you, where it's about, okay, I feel like the meditation was what created this buffer for me of when I had big feelings come up. It's like, okay, what is the feeling that I'm having and why? Like, what is this about? What's the underlying root cause? And can I play out the whole story about it? So this is how I feel. I feel like this, it's the end of the world type scenario. But what's the truth? Like, what's the worst case scenario that could happen? What's the best case scenario that can happen? What is probably the reality of what is going to happen? And just going through that whole story, that whole narrative, rather than just like worst case scenario, the feelings taking over and reacting to that. And really it's then walking, like a walking meditation, where I just walk and contemplate on one thing specifically over and over again from all angles, dissecting it. And over time, first of all, man, if you just walk long enough, it changes everything. You can walk off anything. It's so crazy. And you can walk yourself into a whole new perspective by the end of it. Recently I kind of went through this I always go through this really hard time in the transition into spring. It happens every year. It's happened to my dad, his parents. And it just seems like a switch is flipped. Everything that was great is all fucked. Like, everything is just fucked now. And nothing changed. It's just this switch. And actually, there was a lot of things negatively happening in my life at the same time. But, and, like, that's what first of all, I would, like, lay in the dark in the fetal position and just go through the whole story over and over again, dissect it. Is this reality? Okay, this actually isn't reality. These feelings are real, but this isn't actually reality. None of the things that you're actually afraid of are happening. You actually are safe. You actually are secure. Nothing's really changed in your life. Go for these long-ass walks and just dissect these emotions and these feelings and tell myself the true story. And even though the feelings may remain the same, they start to loosen up a little bit. They become less. And overall, I can just walk myself into a new perspective. I don't know. I know, like, the meditation is often about, like, it's not necessarily silencing the thoughts, but separating yourself from the thoughts. And I guess that's kind of what I'm doing by thinking it as well. It's like I like to think myself into separation from it and having that awareness. But I believe it was my meditation practice that brought me to a place that I could start to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Sounds like you have a little bit of both of our techniques or methodologies into your methodology as one. So that's great.
That's right. That they all work together. That sounds like a lot of the Zen approach, where they'll use things like koans and some intentional seeding of thoughts. Like a koan can be something that wraps up the mind, that you like a problem to solve that might not have a solution. What is the sound of one hand clapping? If a tree falls in a forest, doesn't make a sound. Classic one. And they go on. There's thousands. This is a practice that's been going on for thousands of years. I think one of the things they're trying to do is kind of wear down that thinking mind, not in a negative way, not in an abusive way, but like, no, instead of trying to suppress your thoughts, which is never the point of meditation, even though a lot of people, misconstrue it that way and think that, oh yeah, the thoughts are this bad thing and I'm trying to quiet them. And meditation is a quiet, still mind. Not the way I've learned, not the way that I've seen it most useful.
It's almost like it's almost like giving like a puppy that likes to chew something that you don't mind it chewing. Like, good, you want to be an active chewer? Here, chew this thing. Like, go nuts, go crazy.
That's right.
It's not going to hurt anything for you to get obsessed about this little chew toy here. Similarly, the brain thinking about an unanswerable question. Like, cool, get exhausted on this rather than getting spun up about things that you're actually attached to.
That's right. And
yeah,
then
like
that can allow deeper truths to come through. You wear through that surface level. Again, maybe those people who say they have no inner dialogue, maybe that's, the part they're in all the time, that surface level that's running but not getting anywhere. And maybe if something were to wear that down, if they were able to walk off their thoughts by not even physically walking, but just taking them for a walk, let them go, give them that toy, go, then maybe there's that little break. And that's glorious, that little space that you're talking about developing, Matt, that little space from the thoughts, where then something more true, more authentic, maybe more useful can come through. Yeah. It's not a war, though. I think that's the big thing with ourselves. As soon as we set ourselves up as the opponent, we're in a losing fight. Some part of you is going to lose. Yeah. So which one of yourselves is going to lose? That's how about we make this a win-win situation instead of a lose-lose.
That's good. I mean, that pertains also to the relational dynamic. If you make your partner your enemy,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'm so opposed to the vernacular of we're in a fight. I see all these self-help people saying, well, I'll teach you how to fight better. Like, no, you're not fighting at all. Fighting means it's you versus me. Someone's going to lose. Someone's going to get hurt at the very least if we're fighting. May not be a winner or loser, maybe a draw, but there's going to be pain. There's going to be suffering. It's going to be uncomfortable to fight with somebody rather than working together to find a solution. Through actually hearing each other.
I definitely like that you use the word conflict, and I've definitely brought that into my vocabulary when talking about that. Like, conflict is good. The fighting is bad.
Right.
Yeah, the fighting sucks. The fighting is painful. Fighting ends up in bad, negative things being said, But yeah, the conflict is an opportunity. So.
Yeah, violence versus struggle. We can struggle and, get to someplace beautiful, but can we violently fight and get to a better place? Yeah. Maybe, more philosophical question, but I like to think of conflict a lot more.
Yeah, cooperation, right? Violence versus cooperation. Yeah. We're working together, or are we attacking each other?
That's right. Yeah. Well, on this topic of thoughts, this is something I wanted to pick your brain about, Matt. You post a lot and educate a lot on nutrition and nourishment, and I was recently doing a mindful writing workshop, and one of the first exercises we did was a meditation where you notice thoughts, and we started thinking about our thought diet. And this is a term that I don't hear as much as I'd like, and a different way of framing things. And so actually back up one step first and talk about mental exercise. We don't talk about that as much either when we talk about fitness, your mental exercise. Most people feel like they should go to the gym or, work out or exercise, and the body needs fitness exercise to feel good, to be healthy. Most people get that whether they do it or not. It's more in the culture. We see that. But we don't, in this culture at least, talk about mental fitness at the time, mental training. What are we doing each day or at least a few times a week to train our mind and to make it more fit? So when you start to adopt that in practices like meditation, which I would think of as, mental training, every time you return your attention back to the breath or notice a thought, that's like a mental rep. It's like the bicep curl for your mind, where it might get stronger and can form new pathways. So just like in, physical fitness, your diet is such an important part of that, a critical part, again, that a lot of us might ignore when we hit the gym and then don't get enough protein or still, eat or drink or these other things that are going to be, eat or drink things that aren't great for us and maybe hurt that process. Same thing with our thought diet. I think about thought diet a lot and what's coming in, the content, the conversations, the books, the articles, the TikTok scroll or the Instagram feed. What's coming in is your thought diet, whether you realize that or not. And I keep thinking back to this idea of these 50% of people possibly, don't feel an inner dialogue. And, I feel like they would suffer from a blind spot there of not, really understanding that a lot of the thoughts that are there, that they can't even, identify as separate from themselves, aren't coming from themselves. Right. There's a soundbite from Fox News or from their Instagram feed just like flitting around in there wreaking havoc, and they have no idea. It's just,
or even from childhood, from something some teacher said or something some school indoctrinated you into thinking.
That's right, deep in there. So Matt, what do you think about this idea of thought diet and nourishing your mind in the same way you might nourish your body?
Yeah, I think that's huge. In fact, like in my detox program that I take people through, one of the main components is detoxing the mind and nourishing the mind as well. Mm-hmm. And so what are you consuming on a regular basis that is feeding dis-ease rather than health in your body?
Dis-ease.
And so, it's like, it's crazy. I work with mostly women, and it is crazy to me how most women one of the main things they love to watch are those like Dateline murder mystery things.
I know.
And like it's all about rape and murder, and I'm like,
Yeah.
so maybe during this 4-month process we don't consume that kind of information, because what part of your spirit is that feeding? What part of your mind is that feeding? Is that feeding life, or is that feeding death? Is that helping you to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish? Is that making you feel safe and secure in your body? Is that regulating your nervous system so your body can heal? No, it's not. We're so addicted to fight or flight. We're so addicted to being in fear. We actually love it, you know? And by we, I mean most of us. So I do think
it's exciting. It's exciting, right? There's a dopamine hit or something, right? Whether we like it or not, but we feel something that thing there.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's big. So the goal is always like remove the news that's going to put you in a negative perspective, right? Remove the fear porn, remove the Dateline murder mysteries and scary movies, and focus on things that make you feel good, whether it's self-help stuff, or like if you're religious, something that's in alignment with your religious programming, or spiritual development. And just focusing on things that make you feel good, or even like comedies and stuff, right? Those things make you feel good. That's a vibration. That's a good vibration to be in as you're trying to heal. So really, everything you consume should make you feel good, not put you in a negative perspective. And I think that is, actually, the more that I do this work, the mental and emotional side, I think even trumps the physical side. In fact, like a lot of our dietary choices and nutrition choices are created because we're trying to suppress thoughts and feelings in the first place.
I can resonate with that.
So if we can work on our emotional state and get the emotions out and process them effectively rather than storing them in the body, if we can change the way we think and our thinking patterns, then we will actually make better choices in general that equate to this change of mind and perspective. Another thing that I like as far as the mental exercises, like I said, is the journaling, is dumping out the negativity, following that up with the gratitude list, and then writing out these things that you want as if you already have them. So you're literally retraining your mind to go from the negative to the positive on a regular basis. And again, it's not about just, I think a lot of times in like the new age movement or spiritual groups, the yoga community, it's like everything's love and light, and it's like, well, no, it's not, you know. And we have to acknowledge the darkness and the fears and the anxieties and get that out in order to bring in the things that we do want. You can't just like suppress it and say all these happy-go-lucky things and it's going to change. So it's this active process of detoxing the mind and then filling the mind with what you do want, with that nutritional value for the mind.
Cool.
I had a thing that came to mind when you were talking about the free flow journaling, and this is something that I've recommended to clients, and this is just a circling back to like cultivating awareness, is by journaling and just dumping whatever out on the paper, you then have a chance to read it from a new vantage point, right? So now you're observing the thoughts that were in your head. And now you can be like, wow, was I really thinking that? Like in retrospect, now that I have clarity, I'm reading it back. That's crazy that I had written that down and that was actually in my head and I don't believe that thought. So who's putting that thought in there? Where's that thought coming from if I don't believe in that thought, right? So just wanted to put that out there too as another potential way to help people cultivate that awareness.
Yeah, I like that.
Totally. What's the origin? That's one of the meditations I led during that workshop and it was a little hard. It was a little too much to do at the same time as you're trying to just practice meditation in the first place. But what if you could trace the origin of each thought that arose and not just see it as a cloud, but then, all right, where'd that cloud come from? Or did that come from that cloud system over there? Did that come from this one here?
Especially if you see that cloud a lot, it might be worth figuring out why that cloud keeps popping out.
Well, and I mean, where do you guys think the thoughts come from?
You like to take it broad.
I love it, Matt. I love having you on here. Let me get the tinfoil.
The government. The
Well,
the microchips.
Well, we talked about like the programming that we consume, right? That's huge.
Yeah.
But
It's
also
called programming. It's literally called
it's all out there.
programming.
Yeah, television.
the spelling of words,
Yeah. But it's like outside of the conspiratorial side of things, it's like our minds are like antennas, and there's this ether that we're sourcing information from, and a lot of us receive the same information at the same time in different locations, the same ideas. And so it is interesting, like, where do these thoughts come from? And besides just the programming.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with the antenna part when it comes to ideas. I think that many times ideas are not necessarily, like, I don't think they belong to me. When ideas come to me, I don't believe that they're my ideas necessarily. Because sometimes I'm like, how would I even do that right now? You know what I mean? Like, that's not even a realistic like possibility. So why would that idea come into my awareness in this moment? It doesn't always make sense. But when it comes to thoughts, I think it goes back to what you were talking about, Matt, about like my emotional state, what's happening right now, where is my, like, you know, how's my nervous system doing? And depending on where my emotional state and my nervous system and my surroundings and my circumstances, that will dictate. And also my food. That was a link that we had talked about many times about, like, if you... I had clients who, the same day that they would cave and eat Chick-fil-A, they had a big fight later that day. And so then, it's like tracing that origin. Where did it start? Was it the Chick-fil-A that caused the conflict with their partner? Or was it the succumbing to the, all right, fine, I'll indulge, I'll give myself what I want, even though I know it's not good because maybe it'll help my emotional state that maybe was somehow disrupted or not in, you know, equilibrium. And so then that kind of like, it was like, all right, well, I've already freaking eaten Chick-fil-A, so I may as well lash out at my partner because I'm having a bad day, and this kind of justifies all of these bad behaviors that I'm doing. Like, where does it begin? And so I think all of those things play a part in the thoughts that are coming through my head is like, where am I at? What's happening to me? And am I feeding myself? Like, am I taking care of myself? Am I practicing self-care? Am I eating a healthy meal? Am I moving my body? Or am I sitting around scrolling all day?
Yeah.
I think that impacts it.
Man, I want to hit on that too. Like, when we talk about parasites, and if we kind of... I like to think of parasites often as being these metaphysical entities. And, you know, like, we're all individual Earths, right? We're made of primarily bacteria. We're full of parasites, little mini selves, 100 trillion selves or cells if you want. Right, so we are an ecosystem on Earth in general. And so when we make these poor food choices, we're creating imbalances within this Earth, right? And there's this idea that parasites are these lower vibrational entities that feed on lower vibrational emotions and lower vibrational foods. And then they connect to our nervous system and make us crave things that feed them. And that could be low vibrational programming, right? Television, movies, low vibrational food, sugar, right? So there's this metaphysical aspect of it. And so when you were mentioning, like, your clients eat the Chick-fil-A and then they lash out at their partner, well, like, you just consume this low vibration and then that's lowering your vibration. You don't have the same capacity. You're not at a higher vibration to respond in that way. So yeah, it is all, and there's no separation. And I think that is the biggest problem that I see in the health community or in the medical community. It's like isolating every aspect of the body and consolidating them, and then isolating the mind from the body or the emotions from the body. It's all one. There's no separation. How I communicate with my partner and the food I consume and the exercise that I have and the content that I watch, it all is one and the same. It's all one in the whole. So anyways, I just wanted to dump that in there.
Yeah, no, thanks for throwing that in. I'm going to make a quick note that Chick-fil-A likely not a potential sponsor for us at this point. Okay.
I wouldn't take them. I wouldn't take them either.
I don't think they'll be calling.
We're not sponsoring poison on this podcast.
Chick-fil-A gives metaphysical parasites. No,
100%.
They're feeding you parasites.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw this Instagram reel where this guy was talking about, like, how you're addicted to the Chick-fil-A sandwiches, and you look at the ingredients, and there should be 2 ingredients, chicken and then bread, but instead it's like 30-something ingredients. You're like, you're addicted to the other 30 whatever things is what you're addicted to. It's not the chicken that you're addicted to, and it is the parasites. It's all of these things that they're adding to it so that you are addicted to it. The legalized MSG, natural flavors, like It's natural. Is it though? If
Well,
it's addictive.
and it's okay because they're Christian, so it's
Right.
okay.
Yeah. Right.
It's like they love Jesus though, as they poison.
Right. We're supposed to forgive everyone, even if they do it every day except Sunday. People.
That's right. On that, I really like the antenna thought. I bring that up a lot. I think about narwhals sometimes with their antenna. It's kind of like they think that big tooth that's coming out of their head, it's not a horn, it's a tooth. It's actually a tooth.
It's a tooth.
Yeah. I know people who don't they don't know that narwhals are real. They think it's like a unicorn, like a mythological thing. And I love whenever I meet someone, I can like show them some narwhal videos, be like, I'm about to blow your mind. And it's a tooth. It's absolutely a joy. Absolutely joy.
It comes from the mouth.
It's made of the same material of a tooth.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's not used as they don't know what they use it
Yeah.
for. It's the same material as a tooth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they think they might use it more like an antenna, this like sensing thing, just like our teeth are really sensitive to heat and cold, and you can tell hard, soft. It might actually help them to navigate and find things. But I like this idea of us as antennas, and that an idea of consciousness that I'm open to. I don't like to hold anything closely. I really try to have this radical agnosticism to all beliefs. I think it's a really helpful view in, like you were talking about earlier, in percentages. Thinking in these kind of practical percentages. That this feels true to me, like 80%, and I think rationally with what I've read, which is only some drop in the bucket of human knowledge and research, that 90% chance this is how things are, and I act accordingly and hopefully tune those and don't get too attached to one thing being right or wrong. That's just how I try to navigate my narwhal antenna around the ocean. But with that, I'm very open to this idea that we're tapping into this consciousness field. That consciousness isn't this internal thing that's generated just by the brain. And there's a lot of evidence supporting that, and they keep finding more things. And anecdotally, we all know about that time. You think of something, and then someone, especially your partner, someone you're attuned to, says the same thing. Happens to me and my partner all the time. Like literally, like multiple times a week. I'm thinking about this person, and they say this, and you can try to rationally track it back. Okay, maybe we saw a picture of them, together a few minutes ago, but regardless, it happens enough. Or you're thinking of someone and they call you out of the blue. Coincidence, sure, maybe. But I do think there's some, it resonates with me that there's a field we're tapping into. And they've been doing a lot of research on nonverbal autistic children and these things, the telepathy tapes, if you've heard of them. Really fascinating series of research conducted by physicians, neurologists, and they've created this podcast series around it that seem to show these nonverbal autistic children actually are, for lack of a better word, telepathically communicating with each other, with their parents, and able to see and experience things that other people are experiencing through their senses that they'd have no way. They're in another room and they can tell you what word their mother is reading and what number on a random number generator they're doing.
I've heard it's like, they've got 1 foot in the metaphysical and 1 foot in the physical. Like they're kind of, they're walking in both worlds, which is why they struggle to assimilate the way that society wants them to. But maybe in ancient civilizations, they would have been heralded as, prefects or, oracles or whatever.
Exactly. And that's the kind of thing I think of when we talk about this thought diet and this idea that our thoughts aren't contained just within our head. And then, man, that opens up a lot. It opens up a lot of responsibility, I think, for my thoughts, knowing that they might, leak across to the neighbors or to my partner. And again, I can hold both. I can hold that in a totally materialist view of my way of being, my behaviors and stuff. If I'm acting unhealthily, might leach over to other people based on my body language and the way I'm talking to them. Or in this other way that we're tapping into this field together. And so what we're putting into the field is picked up by others. And it's a really helpful concept to play with to lead to some more responsibility for that thought diet and figure out what is nourishing for you and what's not. And that's one thing I wanted to get it back to you on, Matt, is how do you know what's nourishing for you? How do you, let's forget about others, how do you know what's nourishing for you? One thing you mentioned a few times was things that make you feel good. and I resonate with that. The yoga teacher Adrian, who does like all the one of the most popular yoga teachers on YouTube, does great free content for people. Her company is called Find What Feels Good. Great place to start if you've never been on a yoga mat. Instead of I'm going to get into this difficult posture, maybe you find what feels good. But it's interesting to me that those things normally feel bad at first, or at least difficult, right? The yoga posture, the thing I need the most is the thing I avoid because there's discomfort, and then I feel better later. So to turn that back to you, Matt, how do you know what's nourishing for you, especially since so many things make us feel good and then worse? The Chick-fil-A might make us feel good, it taps into some dopamine and some other stuff, then feel worse. How, other than finding what feels good, which at some level is helpful, how do you find what's nourishing?
Yeah, so do you mean from the physical standpoint, the mental, all the above?
I'd say all of the above, because I see the parallel in all of it. The food that I eat, makes me feel good, make me feel bad, maybe makes me feel good longer. The thought, if I get the adrenaline spike from the murder podcast or whatever, it literally blows my mind. It's not something I've gotten into. I'm sure I have other adrenaline spiking activities that I know I do that are, not healthy either. But the like you mentioned, that pattern of women especially being drawn to these podcasts that logically to me would just make them feel so unsafe and have this warped view of the world and how dangerous it is. But feels good, then probably makes them feel worse. Yeah, how do we tap in at any of those levels to what is actually nourishing?
Yeah, I think it's important to differentiate the short-term gratification and then the long-term feeling good. It's like, how do things really impact you in the long term? So yeah, when I shot heroin, it felt really good. That felt good for sure. But in the long run, it made me feel like shit, and then I was dependent upon it to not feel like shit, right? And it's the same thing with the fast food. The fast food is heroin. It's like people are addicted to fast food, to processed foods. It actually interacts very similarly in the body, or in the brain, I should say. So it's about separating the short-term satisfaction and the long-term how do you feel, right? So for me, it's all about bringing balance back to the body. So when we talk about nourishment, food is information, right? And so when we're eating genetically modified foods or processed foods, we're eating misinformation. And if you're constantly consuming misinformation, then your body's going to respond to that misinformation and not be working properly, essentially. So we have to be able to look at it from the long term. And from the mental aspect of it, I always like to play around with this idea of like thoughts create hormones, right? So you have the pituitary gland, which is where the hormonal system begins. And when you think a specific way, when you have a specific belief system, this is why I think that the Western way of looking at disease is so damaging, because you take this identity, you take this group of symptoms, they give you a label, this becomes your identity, and then you literally believe this thing, and your mind, your hormonal, your endocrine system will create the hormones that create that specific label for yourself. So you're creating this disease because your thoughts create those hormones, and your hormones tell the cells of the body how to respond, right? So you create your own illness with the way that you think. So on the physical aspect, how do you nourish yourself? Like, if we want to look at it from the most simplistic way, you eat real food. And from my perspective nowadays, you eat real food in the way that we would in our most natural state. So getting healthy is about getting back to our most natural state. What would we do, what would we consume if we weren't living in this matrix called a city? If we didn't have a supermarket? And in reality, you would eat seasonally. If you were in like the best areas, you would basically eat certain fruits, certain vegetables, and high quality animal products, right? Like that's what you would consume. Like even these things that we deem health foods, like peanut butter or like almond butter, how many almonds would you actually find in the wild to smash up and create almond butter, to eat almond butter on a regular basis? It just wouldn't happen. The amount of lectins in that stuff is going to tear your gut up. So I think it's really interesting thought experiments to think about, what would we actually consume in our most natural state? We wouldn't. All right. I think this is really interesting. I had a client that moved here from Spain, right? And she talked about that you have to go to the grocery or the market. They don't have grocery stores. They go to the market every single day, multiple times a day. You have to, because all the food goes bad as soon as you buy it. So they go buy bread first thing in the morning, and by the afternoon that bread is bad, so they're going back in the evening for more bread. what the fuck is at the store? That God only knows how long it's been sitting in a bag and then on a shelf, right? And so when I say real food, people think, well, bread is real food. It's not. It's not anymore. We're not getting real bread. The grains are not real. They're all genetically modified. They're all hybridized. If we look at wheat products right now, they've genetically modified wheat to create glyphosate as part of its DNA, right? So, like, it's going to kill insects. What do you think it's going to do to you when you eat that? And so getting back to our most natural state, which is why basically what I always recommend for people are high-quality organic fruits, vegetables, and high-quality animal proteins. And across the board, that's what's going to nourish you and make you feel good when you cut out all those other things. The other thing that I want to talk about is like blood sugar balancing. The more that I've done this line of work, I realize like the key foundation to human health is your blood sugar balance. And so that's a lot to do with how you regulate stress. So with the mental side of things, if you're consuming things that are creating this adrenaline spike, cortisol wrecks your hormones. You're trading cortisol for your sex hormones, essentially. So when you drink coffee on an empty stomach, you're spiking your cortisol. You're putting yourself in a fight or flight state immediately. And you're wrecking your sex hormones, essentially. So we want to balance that blood sugar. And in our society, like, you're constantly consuming excess sugars, grains, starches in excess all of the time. And so we get these huge blood sugar swings. And then our hormones are wrecked. So we want to balance the blood sugar, and then we can balance our hormones. So it's all about finding that balance. And the irony is that balance is the exact opposite of what people in our society perceive to be balance. You know what I mean by that?
Say more.
So, like, people will be like, well, what you're asking me to do is, where's the balance? I'm like, well, no, you're just so used to this imbalance. You're so far in the imbalance that you think, well, I should be able to eat like a pepperoni pizza like once a week, right? Like, or a couple times a week. Like having some ice cream after dinner, like that's imbalance. I'm not drinking soda all day.
I ate a salad with dinner, so the balance is ice cream for dessert.
Right. And no, like that is all out of balance, so completely out of balance. Like you would never even consume any of those products in our most natural state. It wouldn't happen. I think they said in Europe, they have in total about 400 food ingredients. In the United States, there's 10,000 food ingredients. And most of them are not food. So in order to nourish, sorry, that was very long-winded, but in general, it's getting back to eating real food and finding that balance within your body. And once you achieve that balance and you balance those hormones, like you don't know how good you can feel because we've been systematically poisoned physically from the food and then mentally from the news and the programming and the Netflix and the propaganda. And so we don't even know how good we're supposed to feel. And if we want to look at society, it's 75% of Americans are obese. Over 70% of Americans have a chronic illness. Over 60% of children now have a chronic illness. It's insane. Like, chronic illness is the norm. Obesity is the norm.
Yeah, no, that wasn't long-winded at all. I thought that was very concise, and you really spoke to this way in which everything is relative. And we have to be really careful about where our barometer sits, our internal and just balancing mechanism works, because we're these mimetic creatures. We look at things and we kind of mime them, we copy them, and we see someone and we learn it from a parent, let's say, that this is balance, the pizza once a week, the ice cream, or this is balance, fighting 3 nights a week, well, and then once you have a set point, basically, you call it a set point, once you have a set point, you're comparing to that. So if I'm fighting less than 3 times of fighting, not in conflict, if I'm like knock down, drag out fighting with my partner less than 3 times a week, I'm doing great. We're in the good side of the pendulum, If I was doing it 7, maybe that'd be a problem. But that's all related to a set point. Same thing with our diet and food, that, what we think of, it's just mind-blowing. And I'm struggling with the mind-blowingness of it right now, because we all get locked into different frames and frameworks without knowing it. without knowing it, we're just swimming through the waters, and we don't realize that the people we're swimming in, the environments we're swimming in, are determining what we feel like is natural, good, what is a healthy decision, what's not. And no one's wrong for that. It's just as part of the human condition and that's where that insight, whatever cultivates awareness and can show you a higher state of well-being, a more sustained way of well-being in your physical body, in your relationships, is so very important. And sometimes it takes a major shift, whether that's going to another country and seeing a whole another way of being. Maybe that's fasting and seeing what your body's like without anything for a few days, and then, reintroducing stuff. You're like, oh, that was weird. I used to think peanut butter 3 times a day was my balance point. It was healthy for me. And maybe it doesn't agree with my gut and all these. And so there's this term I've used on the podcast a few times that really resonates with me, perverse familiarity. We can get really familiar with something that's not healthy. I think about in relationships a lot. Some people, if all they grew up with was yelling, and their parents always yelled, and they yelled at them, and then they get into a relationship and they're perversely familiar with this. It's familiar, it's safe, it's the family, it's what their version of safe and secure is yelling and anger and conflict. That is their set point, and that's what they'll see and what they'll keep returning to, the set point, what they'll keep rebalancing to again and again, unless, call it a miracle, call it a change of perspective, insight shows another way of being, and then they're willing to find a path there. I just have so much empathy for the human condition when I see that, and especially culturally, like you're pointing out, Matt, about how far away from, and I struggle with the word natural, but how far away from balanced at least. Because natural's great, but not always the best. There's that naturalistic fallacy that natural, while it is often so good, some things that are natural are like, children dying in the early years because of infant mortality and a bunch of things that can go wrong. And maybe unnatural interventions can help sometimes, and human science can have some real benefits. An antibiotic or something to help with a bacterial infection might not be natural, but also could be very beneficial in the right setting. But a lot of things have been so far removed from nature and are not serving us or not getting us to a healthy balance with anything. And until there's some kind of cultural change, it's going to be really hard to break out of that in a bubble. That's one reason I really like community. And whenever I did a fasting container that you guys were in and helped with so much, and showed a lot about your experiences with it. And I think Matt, you produced a guide of how to ease into it. It was so helpful to have that community. I don't think I could have had such a good fast without other people that I was able to mime, that I was able to see some things and then realize what my capability was. So that was long-winded, but really appreciate this framing. And for me, the takeaway is just keep looking, keep being curious, and see where your ideal is, and not just what's this pattern that I've been in, and am I okay with this pattern continuing for the rest of my life, or where do I want to go, and what steps, what people, what communities am I going to need to be in to get to an ideal life, an ideal feeling in my body and in my relationships that I want.
Yeah, can you say it was, you said perverse?
Perverse familiarity. I really like that word familiarity. Familiar is what you're used to, what's maybe comfortable for you. And the perverse part is whenever it's comfortable, but it's not even good. And that's what addiction, I think, a lot of the time can be. Like you said, that cycle of up, down, it can be very, very intimately familiar and not good.
Yeah, I see that a lot with childhood trauma, or the relationships that you have with your family, and your nervous system is used to that. That feels comfortable and familiar for you. Or I talk about a lot that chronic illness is so common that it's just our normal. So it's this perverse familiar, gas, bloating, headaches, allergies, all these things that are chronic dis-ease, but we don't see it that way, right? And because disease is so common. So I really like that perverse familiarity. That's really good.
Yeah, before we get too far away from that layup that you were giving, Derek, the next new moon is May 26th, so anybody wanting to fast, I do a 72-hour water fast every new moon, so May 26th, if anybody wants to get in on it, reach out. Matt, Derek, of course, would love to have you both in it. Matt, it's been a while since we've done one together. It'd be good to get one up again.
Yeah, I just did a 6-day pretty recently. It actually kicked my ass.
Yeah.
Imagine.
It's not all that familiar, not always the easiest place, but that's that growth zone, right? I think about that a lot, growth zones, comfort zones, and risk zones, and how to change while not putting yourself in the risk zone and the discomfort that's so great that you can't benefit, and you go back to someplace maybe even worse than where you started. How do you comfortably get into that growth zone that's uncomfortable, but positive, get you somewhere?
Yeah, I think it takes some level of like self-empowerment to break free from those perverse familiarities. I've read from many, relationship, I don't know what you'd call them, social scientists, people who, that's what they do is they, explore and do research on people and how we engage interpersonally. And there is a lot of evidence to show and demonstrate that the things that you grow up with are the things that you're drawn to because it's familiar. And I've had people who, when they get in a relationship that isn't, scary, from people raising their voices or threatening or yelling or whatever, abusive verbally, they're almost like scared, like more scared of not being in that. Like, what's going on here? Why aren't you yelling at me? Why aren't you attacking me verbally? Something's wrong here. This isn't going to work. You're too, maybe they're more of an island, or maybe they're just securely attached and they're not going to lash out. But there's a level of like, what the heck is going on here? Why aren't you doing these things? You should be doing these things because that's what everyone has always done. And I think that it takes a level of like empowerment to push past that of like, well, maybe I don't deserve all the things that happened before, and maybe I am worthy of being spoken to in a loving way or whatever. I don't. Yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of like what I started off talking about with Cal and I as we enter into this more of a secure state. It's like, oh, it's kind of boring. It's because we're not used to that. We're used to the chaos. And so that's the perverse familiarity, right? Is the chaos in the relationship. And so it's about adapting. And I almost feel like we talk a lot about stretching the nervous system and how important it is to stretch the nervous system. And in the ways that you're talking about right now, sometimes that stretch is actually for something more positive. It's like, oh, actually, I can feel good in this state where I am being treated well, and I can learn for that to feel good to the nervous system rather than the chaos around me feeling good. And it's creating a new familiarity that's not as perverse, essentially.
That's right. A new norm, a new normal. And yeah, I love that you said the self-empowerment piece, Ian, and I think it's not always, we try to stay away from absolutes. One of the challenges of self-growth, self-improvement, and I don't mean that in any loaded way either. I think if you're not growing, you're probably declining. Like I've heard this, and I believe there's not really maintaining. That's kind of a myth. It's normally one or the other. You're either growing or you're declining, and maintaining, maybe it's possible, but it's probably not. It's probably more, you got to be growing or you're going to be declining. And I think the self-empowerment is where it does have to start. You got to take personal responsibility, and you got to be willing to do something. And then that community is so important, whether that's being in a container, fasting with others, and then because I know someone else is doing this, I have this self-empowerment and a group empowerment that, oh yeah, I can do this. It's like being in a fitness class, a yoga class, where you see someone else doing the thing and they're not dropping out of the posture, and it's difficult for them too. You see them sweating or breathing heavy, and you're like, oh yeah, we are strong. So I keep coming back to that again and again. Take responsibility for yourself, and also be in community with people that make you feel stronger, that make you feel empowered, that show you just how strong you are. So vital.
I wanted to add a visual for what you were saying earlier on the growth, and that maintaining is not possible. You're either growing or you're declining, right? Have you seen that that visual representation of growth as a spiral? How like it's not a linear line of growth. It's kind of like you're going around, and so if you maintained, you would run into the line from before. So you have to either be spiraling up or spiraling down because it's not linear. And so like that image really helped. Like maintaining is a fallacy because a spiral is either going up or it is going down. It cannot just go in a perfect circle. That would be Groundhog Day.
So what do you think about sometimes the spiraling down is part of the spiraling back up?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it really depends on your perspective of what would you consider spiraling down. But I certainly preach this with my clients because I live it, that you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to apply all of these tools all the time. And sometimes you are going to slip. You are going to be emotionally reactive, or you are going to be at capacity, and somebody's going to ask you for something or impose something on you without consent, and that's going to be the thing that you're like, oh, and you fall back into an old pattern. I would say that's spiraling down briefly. But then, like you talked about, Matt, where you and Callan are now is when those types of things happen very quickly. It's like, okay, all right, let's get back on track. This is what happened. We acknowledge it. I acknowledge my part. You acknowledge yours. Great. Now we're spiraling back up again. So it's like a little, like almost like a hiccup, and then it continues spiraling up. But yeah, I would say there is. Totally. Yeah, it's all part of it.
Yeah, I just think about a lot of like the growth that. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It cut out a little bit. Yeah, I was just often thinking about like the expansion is often followed by a contraction, right? It's this things get real tight and then they expand. So it's always this back and forth, this like natural flow of contraction expansion as part of that growth process. And oftentimes I guess that contraction feels like going backwards, but it's just setting up for the next expansion. So
in Buddhism they say even the time off the path is part of the path. You don't feel that all the time, but I keep seeing this picture of zooming out you guys are getting. Matt, whenever you talk about that long term versus short term, I think that's just this continual zooming out, and eventually you might be able to zoom out to the entire lifespan and see with clarity for even just a few moments, and maybe that can give you a lot of inspiration for the ups and downs of life and can see a bigger picture. But if we're stuck in that contracted, narrow, short-term state, all we can see is the next Chick-fil-A. All we can see is the next little bump and down, and then we can't zoom out. So much of this stuff is about zooming out, gaining perspective and space to do anything that matters. That's a change past the one day, then the crash diet, or I worked myself so hard at the gym, and then I took 3 weeks off because I was so sore and injured myself. And there's so much, especially in the culture. I don't think people should internalize that as a personal failure. There's so much in the culture and in this thought sphere around us, this field of consciousness.
What's modeled for us as well.
What's modeled. There's so much of these perversely familiar patterns that are there that I think one of the most valuable qualities for me that I bring into meditation, it's one of my 3 prime qualities that I try to foster in meditation and then in life, is gentleness. If we're not gentle with ourselves, we're really setting ourselves up for a hard time. And gentle doesn't mean not holding ourselves to accountability or standards, but it's holding ourselves to the reality that we're humans, and that you get berating ourselves often leads to us going further downward spiraling a lot more than we can have a dip and we can go back up. And then you used the word cave earlier for cave to get the Chick-fil-A or whatever, and then on that day you get more fights. And yeah, maybe it's the Chick-fil-A, maybe it's just the fact that they were in that state that they were already so whatever reactive they needed to reach out, that and then by succumbing, started a pattern of weakness, of feeling weak, of feeling like they didn't live up to their standard or promise. And from there, again, I love looking at language. Why is it called caving? It's like we're going in, retreating into a cave, into darkness, solitude. And then you talk to your partner from the dark, damp cave. What's going to happen? Are you going to get in a fight that day, or are you going to, have the most inspiring talk you ever had with your partner and, plan the next thing? If you're talking from the cave, maybe not.
Yeah, I think caving actually is coming from caving in. It's short for caving in, and caving in is the the support that you had crumbling and everything falling in because you no longer had the support that was holding everything up and open. And so when you're caving in and going after, fast food or whatever the short-term fix is, you're losing your foundation that was keeping you from falling into those patterns. And so maybe, like Matt was talking about earlier, let's go deeper and find out, why are we there? Why did that happen? What caved in exactly? What part of my foundation did I miss or am I needing that's leading me to want to do this impulsive self-harm behavior, which is poisoning yourself by eating fast food? Not just Chick-fil-A. I mean, they're all terrible. Not to just hate on them, but that's one of the more popular ones, and they're heralded in some, perverse reality that they're a healthier alternative in some crazy way to some of the other garbage that they're serving through drive-thrus. So it's just like, they're all bad, but I pick on them more than anyone else because they're somehow perceived as a healthier alternative when they are certainly not.
Yeah, it's
but
all
enough
relative.
about Chick-fil-A.
It's all relative, right?
I don't want to keep talking about Chick-fil-A. I don't know why they keep coming up. But
They're going to be our anti-sponsor.
We're definitely going to get an email. Cease and desist from Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. But it speaks to that thing about it all being relative. Is Chick-fil-A a healthier option than heroin? Sure. Is that the healthy option if those are your two options that day? Maybe. You guys are like... Tinfoil hats on. Chick-fil-A is heroin. No, but all relative, and it just the conclusions we get to in these conversations. I find these so valuable. But the conclusions are always so, in some ways, unsatisfying, and in some ways, that's just because that's life. You have to rest in uncertainty. There's no one clear path forward for anyone. There's no one quick fix. Someone calls me up to help with something, and one of the first things I have to do is remind myself, I'm not fixing anything today. That's not my role. That's not something I can do. But can we help each other see more clearly and navigate this crazy landscape that we're in? This truly absurd landscape that we found ourselves in as humans, living in the culture that we do. We can help each other, but we're not going to get anywhere there. But this nuance, this broadening of perspective always is so valuable to me.
Yeah, and tying that into earlier saying, we're not fixing it. We're going to help people see and help, ultimately cultivate awareness. Mm-hmm. We're back to that again, helping people understand how those pieces of the puzzle fell the way they did. Like, I have people that will reach out for in a consultation call, an intake call, wanting to see if we're a good fit. And oftentimes the first thing that they're leading with is, well, here's a problem and I want to fix this problem. This is something that's happening to me. I don't want that to happen anymore. I want this. And it's like, okay, that sounds great. But you have to first realize that you, in some capacity or another, co-created this. And so if you don't understand how you created this in some way, you're going to keep creating it. It's not just, I can't wave a magic wand and be like, all right, well, this isn't happening anymore. Fix that. And now it's never going to happen again. You created that in some way. So cultivating that awareness of the responsibility or the part that you played to, because it takes two. It takes two people to do anything. A relationship takes two. A conversation takes two. A fight takes two. A positive experience takes two. Like, it takes two people to create that dynamic. And so to think that, oh, well, it's all someone else's fault is, it may feel good. Back to that. It may feel good to be like, well, this is all your fault. You're to blame. But that's not really the full truth. But it might make you feel better in the short term. But it certainly isn't going to give you the thing that you're wanting over here if you keep doing this thing over here. And so, again, cultivating awareness is so important. Zooming out is another term. That's funny that you mentioned that. And I don't know if it's come up between us or not, but we mentioned Sinjin earlier, and he was doing this. He was a part of this GM bus project. It was a crypto awareness project where they had this big, Mercedes, bus that was traveling around the country, and everybody was there were these meetups, and everybody could draw something with a paint marker on the side of the van. And what I wrote was zoom out. And this was 4 years ago when we did this, but it's just crazy that theme has stuck and continues to come back up. A little God nod here of yes, zoom out. We'll keep bringing it up. But yeah, zoom out. And I think zooming in is how you get so caught up in the slip, the cave in, the fall, the worry, the story, the whatever, is you're so zoomed in on this one thing, you're not able to see anything else. You're not able to consider other things that might be happening. You're just tunnel vision focused on this one thing that you're stressing about or whatever, and zooming out. What a great, a mantra. Just zoom out. What more can I see that's happening here? What more can I consider here in my experience or in my feelings about this or whatever?
I like that as a mantra. That'd be a great meditation. I'm going to try that maybe later today. Zoom out. That was a really good mantra.
Yeah. Well, I hope it's helpful. So let me know how it goes. And if anyone else uses that mantra, definitely let us know. And Derek, you wanted to add a question at the end. I don't know if we feel complete, but I feel like that feels like a pretty good spot, unless, Matt, you have anything else for us, or Derek, you have anything else?
I'd like to hear more about, Matt, the coaching work you do and just how people can find you if they want to work with you. Just anything like that.
Yeah, so I offer biofeedback scans, which come back with imbalances, deficiencies, organ stress, physical and emotional toxins in the body, and I provide a report with dietary suggestions, supplements. I offer Rife therapy, ozone therapy, and I typically walk people through 4-month detox protocols to reverse chronic dis-ease, where I focus on detoxification, on nutrition, on inner child work, somatic emotional release, so detoxing body, mind, and spirit, and getting nutrition in body, mind, and spirit as well. My Instagram is at I'm Refreshed, and then my Facebook is Matt Michaels, and then my website is refreshedhealing.com.
All right, and tell the listeners where you're located.
Sorry. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Gotcha. And do
Hard
you
to
just
get
work?
But I do help people long distance.
Sure, that's what I want to know. Yeah, people can reach you outside. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, and no, I feel complete. Like I said, these conversations are always so helpful for me, and I just really appreciate the time with you guys getting to speak about this. And I want to include more people in this, so I'm going to put out that call for questions. We would really like to hear from you, listener, whoever you are right now. Hopefully I'm making eye contact, looking at that green dot. We want to hear from you. If you have a question, a topic that you want us to discuss on this podcast, we have a wide range of guests, and sometimes Ian and I or some of the other coaches will just tackle these things. So send them in. We'll put the email in the bio that you can reach out to. You can also comment on the video or on whatever platform you are seeing this on, but email would be the best way to make sure that we see it, and we would love to hear from you. If you have a question, topic that we can try to answer, we'll try to pair that with the best guest that might be most resourced for helping with that, and just help us to make sure this is the most useful for you and other listeners. If you're having a question or a problem, most likely someone else is having that same one, and it can be a great service to others and yourself to be vulnerable and share that question with us. We're happy to hear it.
Great. Thanks, guys. So glad to have you back, Matt. Thanks, Derek, for being the co-pilot on this awesome little thing that we're doing together. And thanks, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
This has been the Do You Feel Heard podcast. If you're interested in resources that will help you move through conflict, you can go to doyoufeelheard.com, where we have tools for individuals and couples.